and welcome to our February episode of Miracle Conversations. I'm here with Dr. Dave Asomaning, who is an executive coach and focuses on miracles and miracle manifestation and creating the lifestyle that you want by creating your own miracles. And this show is all about decoding miracles, demystifying them, and applying these principles to our lives. My name is Brittany New, and I'm an entrepreneur living in Barcelona, and I've been following Dave's journey and co-hosting the show with him all the way since the beginning of 2021. Last year, we had a theme on forgiveness, but this year our theme is on the topic of love. So what we're going to focus on today is some miracle principles of miracles from A Course in Miracles, and all of the ones that pertain to love. So Dave, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little more what you do, and then go ahead and lead us into these principles today, please.
All right. Well, thank you, Brittany, for that wonderful intro. And thank you as well for hosting this show for us. It's been a real wonderful journey together. And I love how you reviewed also some of the different the theme from last year, which was forgiveness. And I'll just piggyback on what you said and add that we've done other themes like atonement, meditation, peace, light, among others. So, but last year was our first year really recording these. So it might be interesting to go back and review some of those other ones and see if there's a recording option there for us. So I'm an executive coach and I live in Florida, and I specialize in supporting CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and other leaders to develop miracle mindsets. Miracle mindsets lead to improved effectiveness, ease, and fulfillment in the professional and personal lives of the leaders I work with. So, lesson 50 in A Course in Miracles is our anchor lesson for this year. And we keep coming back to that, and I keep mentioning a paraphrased sentence in there. I am sustained by the love of God is the main headline of that lesson. And then through the love of God within me, I can resolve all seeming difficulties or problems without effort and ensure confidence. So that's a reminder to me, and then in this show for this year, why we're focused on love in A Course in Miracles. The power of love helps us to solve any and all difficulties. That's the promise of that particular lesson, and indeed the whole course. So, and then Brittany, as you mentioned, we'll get into a handful of the 50 miracle principles right at the beginning of ACIM. The format is a little bit different with these miracle principles. It's not a lesson which has a bit of theory to the lesson and then a practical application. These principles, I think, set a great tone for our ongoing study of A Course in Miracles. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But wanted to mention that if you'd like to know more about how all of this material we cover on these shows gets put together in my executive coaching method, my book, Nightmares to Miracles, which gets into all of that, is available on Amazon, and we'll have a link to the book in the show notes. All right, so here we go with a handful of the miracle principles, which I'll just read for us. There aren't very many of them, and then we can discuss some of them. I'll check in with you, Brittany, as we go to see if there's anything that comes to mind for you as I read each one of these. So here we go. The first one is, there is no order of difficulty in miracles. One is not harder or bigger than another. They are all the same. All expressions of love are maximal. So here, the way I frequently think of this is that miracles are very binary. In other words, miracles are either all on or they're all off. And elsewhere in the Course, it says that there's this binary nature of miracles. It has two parts. We basically have miracles and then we have grievances, which is why last year's theme on forgiveness was so important, right? Because forgiveness is the releasing or letting go of grievances. And when we let go of grievances, then miracles remain, or miracles are what's left. So, Brittany, any thoughts about this first one?
Yeah, I love this point. I never really considered that naturally as humans we tend to, think this seems more impossible than this, when in definition either something's impossible or not impossible. And we define miracles as things that seem impossible to solve. So, I mean, if you think about it, can something be more impossible than something else? Or is it just impossible or not impossible? Is it a miracle or not a miracle? So if you consider that, the likelihood that one impossible thing that would be really extravagant is less likely than this other impossible thing that's less extravagant, it's just interesting that you don't have to rank them, which is the liberating conclusion that Source can make all of these things happen. I mean, if they can accomplish a small miracle, they can accomplish a large miracle. So that's very cool. I've never thought of that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. You like the idea, and I'm glad for your very clear explanation of how that strikes you. It's excellent, excellent. Yes. So yeah. Just to elaborate on that a little bit more, you might have something like a cold. Somebody might have a cold, and they say, "Oh, I want to get back in the swing of work, and I don't want this cold to last a long time. So I'd like a miracle of healing from my cold." And then somebody else might say, "Well, that really doesn't seem as big or significant or as important as the miracles we sometimes hear about in the Bible, mostly, and other religious texts from other traditions about, say, somebody being raised from the dead." It's like, what? Okay, that just sounds ridiculous. I mean, raising somebody from the dead, they're dead, and they came back to life, if you even believe that kind of a story, versus somebody having a cold. And so again, the point still holds as we learn about miracle mindset, which is that everything that happens to the body, we've talked about this quite a bit in the past, but part of what makes this appealing to me now at this stage of my journey with this is that everything that happens to the body is an illusion. A cold is an illusion, death is an illusion. Anything that happens it's sort of like a nightmare. You're having a bad dream. And when you wake up from the nightmare, you wake up from all of it. Whether you were dying in the nightmare of the movie, or whether you had a cold, you're just waking up to a higher state in which none of that is true or real. So it's just another way to think about it. But I haven't really experienced any resurrections from the dead lately, so we'll see about all of that as we go along. But all right. So I'm going to go to the next principle, and we'll keep doing the same thing. And again, there aren't too many of these. So here we go. The next one is miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. The real miracle is the love that inspires them. In this sense, everything that comes from love is a miracle. So again, right in the heart of our principle, our theme for this year, love, right? And then here it's saying that once we're plugged into love, miracles are a result of love. And so it's here it's really trying to get at the root source or cause of miracles. And this is important to pay attention to, I think, because again, it's just not just some mechanical procedure that we're doing in order to manifest miracles, but we are training the mind to tap into this incredible source of love that wakes us up from all nightmares or all horror movies or all illusions, all suffering. Over to you, Brittany, for any thoughts.
This one is a little bit more multi-leveled, I feel like. So I'm trying to imagine what things would we consider miracles that come from love that we wouldn't normally consider to be miracles. The first thing that comes to mind is obviously the gift of life that is a result of earthly love, I guess you could say. So, I mean, a lot of people say that, creating life is a miracle. That's the only example that really comes to mind. So, what other things come out of love that we wouldn't normally say are miracles, but are? I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding.
No, it's good. It's good. I like it. A little bit of a challenge for us to think this through together. So I'll illustrate this a little bit more in one of the examples I'm going to present about how to apply this to leadership, for instance. And maybe I should just do it now. So in the executive coaching work I do, and for myself as well, there can be a lot of conflict about personnel issues, right? So, let's say you're managing 10 people who report to you as an executive. That's a lot, but, sometimes it's 5, sometimes you can get up to 10, and everybody's going every which way. They're not following the protocols. They're not delivering on what they should be delivering on. They've got bad attitudes about stuff, maybe. They're in conflict with other people. The simplest things don't seem to get done efficiently or effectively, right? So typically for me, if I'm not in this mindset we're talking about, the loving mindset where I'm plugged into divine source, or for my clients, and this is a lot of the coaching, if we're not plugged in, then we get more and more agitated about all the things that are going wrong with our team and in the company or the division or the project, whatever it might be. And as we sort of obsess in a healthy way about leaning into love, which means divine love, source love, whether one simply calls that one's intuition on the kind of the more secular or atheistic side, or whether one refers to it as the inner Buddha or inner Christ, that deliberate tapping in and feeling a sense of peace and release and calm, and that one is really taken care of on some level, leads to it can lead to a drastic reduction in turmoil with regard to how one presents as a leader. And almost always there's a synchronistic or coincidental mirroring for the leaders who do this, where everything calms down with all the things going wrong. It's like once the leader calms down, the whole crew seems to calm down and everything gets into a state of flow. And even if there are people who are still not right for the team, they somehow exit in an easier, less dramatic, kind of complicated, convoluted way. And it's one of the more rewarding aspects of the coaching process to hear a leader say, oh, I get it. If I stay relaxed and plugged into this source of peace that takes care of me or loves me, or I understand this, then my whole movie calms down. A miracle happens, in other words. So it's very, very gratifying. And then for a lot of us, it's like, oh, that's so obvious. Why did it take me so long to figure that out and apply it? And I always say, a lot of these things are obvious after they've been pointed out and after one gets the result, but they don't seem obvious beforehand. Any reactions to any of that?
Yeah, I think if I were to summarize this into words that I use more frequently, I would say that being in a state of love, which is a term that I like to use in my circles, is being in high vibration. So having this high vibration, love focused energy as my natural state opens up my entire movie to be flooded with miracles, essentially, versus the alternative, which is not walking in a state of love, which is really any, more state of grievances and these kind of things overwhelming my day, which is what most of us maybe tend to do if we're not focusing. And then the miracles become blocked. So instead of walking a walk filled with miracles, you're walking a walk filled with nightmares. So that's the kind of, I guess, translation I would give this passage.
Great. Yeah, and again, a great corollary to that is that frequently, most of the time, I would say 95% of the time in a coaching session, let's say a client has presented me with all the things in their nightmare that are going wrong. This is going left. That's not working out. I have this conflict. I have this. Oh, how am I going to manage all of this? It's so much, and it's on so many different complicated levels. And once we've done the coaching process and talked back and forth, usually what I'll hear most of the time, occasionally not, but most of the time I'll hear, I just feel so much better. I'm in that high vibrational state that you just described. When I started the call, I was in a lower state, or I wasn't in a, I wasn't really feeling the love. And by the end of, say, an hour-long call, the client is like, yeah, I did a reset here and I feel really good. And I see how all of this I know what the answer is now about all these problems I listed. It's just the most amazing thing to experience that transformation with the client. And then for the client, then to become a source of doing that with others, right? That in addition to the technical skills that are needed for the job and to do a good job, this is a huge part of leadership in any environment, is to keep, as you say, the high vibrational state or a state of love. So great. Thank you, Brittany. So I'm going to go to the next one. And let's see, this one says, miracles are a kind of exchange. Like all expressions of love, which are always miraculous in the true sense, the exchange reverses the physical laws. They bring more love both to the giver and the receiver, right? So, and of course, in miracles, you see this idea of the physical laws being mostly about scarcity and zero-sum game. So if I have $1 million and I give you half of that, then I have less. I only have $500,000 left, and you have $500,000, right? It's a zero-sum game. The more I give you, the less I have. And the more you give of whatever you have to somebody else, the less you have. That's the kind of thinking that is referred to as the physical laws, based in scarcity and limitation. And then here it's talking about how tapping into love or high vibrational states, as you mentioned, it brings more love to both people, both the giver and the receiver. So it's not following the physical laws of the body and the material world. The more I give something, and at a spiritual level, the more of it I get, and the more the person I'm giving it to gets too. So just checking with you to see if there's anything you want to riff on there.
Yeah, that one was super clear. It's a renewable resource, I guess, as you'd say in science. So it's when the rain falls down, it comes back and keeps the cycle of water. It just keeps coming, and there's an unlimited cycle of this love. Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, good. Nice application. Fantastic. All right, this next one, we've got two more of these. So this next one says, prayer is the medium of miracles. It is a means of communication of the created with the creator. Through prayer, love is received, and through miracles, love is expressed. Right, so here again, it's just, I think what this really is getting at is that in order for us to receive love, we have to be plugged in to source. And that as we're plugged into source, sort of like one of our gadgets would get charged up. As we're plugged in, we get charged up. And that's how we receive love. And prayer is the method by which we get charged up. And prayer, at its best, I think, is a form of meditation. It's a form of quieting the mind and just doing various exercises, slowing the mind down, doing various exercises to plug into source. But once we're plugged in and we're receiving love, then we're able to also express miracles, which demonstrate that we were plugged into love. Right? So miracles are usually done on behalf of other people. If they're in a problem of some kind, we can express that love to and for them, as well as for ourselves, of course. So anything on that that you bring your clarifying minds to?
You already answered my first question, which was going to be to give a definition for prayer for our non-religious viewers watching, or spiritually dogmatic viewers. So I wanted to ask you if you defined prayer as asking for what you want, asking for the miracles verbally, or just, like you said, more about quieting the mind and being open to receiving the energy of love. So it sounded like you were saying that it wasn't necessary to make this, laundry list of things that you want to have, and asking, will you please, give me a miracle for this? Although it doesn't hurt to ask for a specific situation and put your attention to that, I assume. So do you have a take on the verbal versus the nonverbal prayers, or?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the course does deal with it quite elaborately in one of the pamphlets, especially that is an addendum to the course. There are two pamphlets. One is on psychotherapy, and the other one is on prayer. They're fairly short, but they're very detailed. And the one on a prayer talks about a menu of things, right? From starting from petitioning prayer or asking, all the way to merging or fusing or joining with God as the ultimate form of prayer. So I think that's worth noting. And then there are just so many additional nuances to the prayer process. So at a fundamental level, I think they all get described most effectively as plugging in or tuning into vibrationally, like you pointed out, the higher vibration, right? So for instance, there's lesson 77 says, I am entitled to miracles, right? So I usually use that as a sentence completion for the things that I want in my personal life or for somebody else. So I will every day before I get going with my work, I'll say, I am entitled to miracles for everyone I work with. For this client, for this client, for this client. I know what their situations are, I know what they're trying to accomplish. So I am entitled to miracles. So it's not a direct request, God, do this for me, but it's me getting into a vibrational state in which I'm plugged in to the source, and I'm raising my vibration, and therefore when I'm with the client, we will be able to express miracles together. And one manifestation of that being, as I mentioned, that I'm able to help the client get into a high vibrational state in which everything now seems, oh, I can take care of all of that, as opposed to feeling like I'm so stymied and stuck. So I'm entitled to miracles. It's a way of designating the things that we might be focused on that we want breakthroughs in. But the idea is, I think in the course, is that just asking, while it helps us to understand what it is we're in need of, it may not help us to get into the vibrational state that's required to transform us. So it's really all about getting into the right vibration of love. So I don't know how that sounds to you, but those are some thoughts that came up as a result of what you were saying. Great intuition on your part, though. I love it.
I wanted to add to that. There's a little bit of lack mindset when you also ask and beg for something. So I've always been cautious of that when I pray and when I ask. And if I'm asking from a place of desperation or from a place of entitlement, as you said in lesson 77, was it, or 70? Making sure to choose that vibration when you pray and focusing on raising it, not being desperate or pitiful, self-pitying, those kind of things.
Yes. And again, this opens us up onto a whole nother big area. Huge intuition on your part, I think. Excellent intuition. And a lot of times clients will say to me, I've prayed all my life and I'm still struggling with this or that or the other thing. I've prayed. And I always say, well, I don't know everything about this, but there are several different factors that go into the praying process, just exactly what we were talking about now. And then there's also, praying is like plugging into the divine, like, as we're saying, but there's also mountains and mountains of inner blockage that have to be undone, right? So it's not just plugging in. Plugging in has the benefit that we will receive miracle power, but a part of what we're doing with the Course and other spiritual paths is to undo blockages that have accumulated over time. So frequently, for the people who say, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, there's a missing part about undoing blockage. Whether you use the Course itself or you use Ho'oponopono, right? So that's why I'm pretty obsessive about the practical goals, then the unblocking of accumulated toxicity over a lifetime, and then plugging into the divine. These are all discrete skills that go into the manifestation process. And if one of them is missing, the process can be more agonizing. So great. I love how you teed that up so that I could say a little bit more about this whole area of blockage. And we didn't really design all of this. We're just riffing here, just in case anybody in the audience is wondering. Well, I'm saying what I want to say about this stuff, and you're saying what you want to say about it. We didn't really map all of this out. We don't anymore. We might have in the very, very beginning, the first few calls, but yeah. So we've got one more of these, and then we'll be done for today. Actually, so this one. Let's see. Where is this one? Okay. So this is principle number 18. I've been skipping over the ones that don't address love directly, but there are 50 of these where miracle is this, miracle is that. This is what miracle is about. Just amazing. This is one of the first things that really grabbed my attention with the Course in Miracles. Ken Wapnick, now deceased, wrote a book on the 50 miracle principles, just on that. And I jumped into that book in the mid-90s, trying to understand these principles, and that book was very helpful to me. But yeah, you could go into great depth about each of these principles, for sure, as a way of creating a foundation for understanding the Course in a deeper level. But 18, so here we are, 18, then we've got all the way to 50. And again, most of those don't speak specifically to love, which is why we're not addressing them here. So 18 says, a miracle is a service. It is the maximal service you can render to another. It is a way of loving your neighbor as yourself. You recognize your own and your neighbor's worth simultaneously. Right? So here, I frequently think of the prodigal son story or the prodigal child story, just to be a little bit more progressive in the language about it. And again, not to go into the whole thing, we've done it elsewhere, and there's a time and a place to go into it in more detail, but bottom line is that the parent in that story basically says to the wayward child, the love I have for you is maximal. It's not based on your performance. So you've gone and wasted all this money. You've had a wild life. You've suffered. You've struggled. You've come back. You're totally, fully welcome back home. And every right and entitlement in my kingdom is yours again. And then the older child is all upset about that. It's like, wait, what? That's not fair. I stayed here and I worked for you, and you didn't treat me with this special treatment that you're giving him. And then the parent says to him, well, you've had the keys to the kingdom the whole time. You've had my maximum love. And again, it's not based on performance, right? So this is a little bit what the Course is getting at, that as miracle workers, as people with miracle mindset, we have an attitude which is maximal towards everybody. Ourselves and everybody is fully entitled to all, no matter who they are, no matter how hateful or despicable they might seem to us in space and time, that every human being is entitled to all the benefits of God's maximum expression of love. And that, again, if we keep this as part of the mindset, it makes life a lot more miraculous for us and other people as well. So any thoughts on that? And then I'll just recap what I said about how I apply all of this in a nutshell, and we will have accomplished our mission today.
Wonderful. So yeah, in reference to this last principle, I can really see this being helpful when it comes to, trying to cultivate miracles for your team within your company, as you're an executive coach and you're dealing with CEOs, and I have a small team under me as well. So really factoring in time to pray for the people on my team, not just for their work and my business as it pertains to me, but in their entire lives, because obviously not just for business, but we need people in the world that are fully balanced in all the areas of their life. So yeah, I guess it's hard to, if you don't know personally everyone that's on your team, then it can be difficult um, to pray for specific things, but definitely factoring in time to put intention into those people, I think could be a really great start into applying that one. Of course, then you get into the more advanced, which is praying for your enemies, right? That's going to be next level. But the best thing about that is it helps you to overcome your grievances. Maybe you're not there yet, but one step toward overcoming grievances and forgiveness, as we talked about before, could be praying for your enemies. And that could be a good place to start.
Absolutely. And again, that's a whole big topic, right? Which is praying for people who appear in one's perception of the world to be truly despicable, right? I mean, whether we know them personally or whether they're just figures out there in the media, tyrants, warmongers, people who engage in genocide and Holocaust and lead that stuff and foment hatred. I mean, again, you're teeing this up in such a way that it's easy to say from a certain perspective that whatever we see out there is potentially in any of us. So when we tap into love to release it for our enemies, we're doing it for ourselves. When we do it for ourselves, we're doing it for our so-called enemies. I mean, that's the simplest way to understand the benefit, which is that nobody is innocent in the nightmare of the worst that humanity is capable of. We're all complicit in the worst of humanity can do. So when we release it, we're releasing it for ourselves and for other people. It's a huge topic, but you helped us get into this by touching on praying for your enemies. So, and then in the corporate world and in the business world, oh my goodness, there's so many feuds, and people like talking about those programs like Billions. I don't know if that's something you've seen or watched, but Billions is a show on Showtime in which you have a billionaire and his empire, and then he's constantly clashing with other billionaires who seem to be his main adversaries and enemies in the money game. Or there's another program called Succession, which is really about a patriarch and then his kids, and they're all vying for preeminence with regard to who's going to take over the company. And these two shows, their current shows now, they get a lot of coverage in the press because they're apparently talking about actual people out there where it's been disguised a little bit. And then you have older mainstays from way back when, like Dynasty, or I think even Bonanza, something as innocent as Bonanza from way back when, the Western, I guess sort of like the cowboy thing with the Cartwrights and the Ponderosa Ranch. It's all about sort of these empires and how they get along and deal with their enemies and their adversaries and so on. They're all fun to watch. But they're all morality tales too, about how you lead and when you make mistakes and how you correct them and things like that. So, well, good. So bottom line for today in terms of application, as you and I start to wind down on our show today, is about reducing toxicity in ourselves as leaders so that we can then create a snowballing effect in which other people tune in, as you pointed out, to these higher vibrational states, more love, more peace, less turmoil, and then it becomes a cascading process of people being able to be individually and collectively in a state of flow. And that while this sounds very simple to say, it's an intriguing and I don't want to say complicated process, but it's got steps to it in terms of supporting very ambitious, successful leaders to plug into the vibration of love so that they have actually more flow in their own personal lives and with their team. So, all right, that's where we're landing today on my end. Any other thoughts for you, Brittany, as we wrap up for today?
No, nothing to add. I just want to say thanks for breaking down some of these principles for us. It's always a pleasure to talk about these things, and I didn't expect that we would deviate from our traditional flow of using a lesson, but I found this really fun and dynamic this time with the miracle principles. And for any of you watching, I know Dave mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but he has a book called Nightmares to Miracles, which is a really excellent book that really breaks down all of the foundations of this type of thinking and these types of applications. So I personally read it and highly recommend it. And that can give you even more background into some of these principles and different definitions, and goes way more into depth than we could ever go on these videos. So definitely give it a read. It's on Amazon.
Super. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for being a great dialogue partner with this show, for hosting it, for making it possible for us to have this framework where we talk about these things. I really look forward to these calls every month now. And for our dialogue, again, I appreciate how you sort of riff with me or improvise with me, because you help to clarify things, and to communicate to our audience another way of thinking about applying these same things. So the whole thing just works. It's always felt miraculous to me. And for our audience, Brittany is an amazing entrepreneur, and if you've got a course that you want help with and support with on the many different levels that you're putting your message out there, Brittany has helped me with that tremendously. I can't even say enough about it. Again, at some point, we might want to feature you and highlight all the different things you bring to the table for the people you serve. So thank you for all of that work that you've helped me with, and now for the show that you just helped to move along so seamlessly, both in terms of what we do in the show and then the rest of the production aspects of it. I just love what you bring to it. Thank you, Brittany.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for talking about my services. For anyone watching, you can check out my website, brittany.com. But for now, I just want to urge you guys all to really solidify your prayer or meditation practice. That could be a good takeaway from today, and really focus on, embracing that state of love. And, take some time to pray for your team and pray for your enemies if you have any, or anything that's going on in the world that you want to, cure with a little bit of miracle love action. That's always a good thing to do. So thank you guys for watching this show. We'll see you next month in March for the next episode. And thanks, Dave, so much for co-hosting this with me.
You're very welcome, Brittany. Thank you again. And looking forward to seeing you next month on our show. Bye for now.
All right. Bye.